All right, now I'd like to introduce tonight's facilitators, Emma Ashurst and Susan Freeman of the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety. Emma is the manager of the Inquiries and Technical Services team at CCOHS and is also a mental health advocate. Emma works on various projects at the center, such as researching and writing OSH answers fact sheets and providing client support at the Guarding Minds at Work web tool. Emma travels the country speaking on workplace mental health and is a media spokesperson for CCOHS. She is also widely involved in many of the center's internal initiatives and is one of 2 appointed mental health advocates at CCOHS, with responsibilities that include implementing the CSA standard on psychological health and safety in the workplace at the center. Sue Freeman is the Outreach Program Manager at the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety within the Communications Group. She is responsible for a team of people who support CCOHS in delivering occupational health and safety events and facilitated workshops, managing the center's Speakers Bureau and conference programming, as well as content promotion and advertising. Sue has acted as a healthy and positive workplace advocate and mental health champion. Using her background in emotional intelligence, experimental psychotherapy, and positive psychology, she helps organizations develop solutions-focused event and prevention experiences. Sue has postgraduate certificates in positive psychology at work and for education. She also has a Master's of Science Marketing from the London School of Business and Finance and the University of Wales, Cardiff. Thank you so much for being here, and please take it away.
Thank you so much, Brittany. It's a great pleasure. Emma and I are very thrilled to join you tonight from wherever you are and from where we are in terms of traditional territories of various nations, including the 6 nations of the Grand River, where I'm directly broadcasting from. So welcome everybody to Mental Health in Agriculture, hosted by Dufferin County and CCOHS. Thank you. A little bit about us. We've been around well over 45 years now, and in terms of our national focus and purpose, we're here to help promote, inform, and provide the information that helps workplaces and their participants. We provide tools and resources. We love to educate, like we're doing this evening, and have dialogue with communities, with industries, with groups of people that are interested in and are trying to forward the agenda of workplace health and safety. So a little bit about us. Moving straight in, I had the great honor, really, of working with Heather Watson earlier this year. She's afforded us a few slides here, and it's to do with research, healthy minds, healthy farms. And if you look at the right-hand side of the slide, you'll notice that there's quite a rise in terms of stress levels and an interest, really, on the part in the farming research community to help identify what could also be controlled. So you notice there's something about business planning right off the hop. So we're going to talk a lot about things like that tonight. We really, really do want to hear from you. And this comes from a research report of July 2020, so fairly recent. And still, when you think about it, just after COVID had begun, this was released to try and help farmers and agriculture industry people understand what was happening. And to that, there's a couple of interesting points to be made. If you look at the factors, and we're going to get into that more this evening, and I thank Emma in advance, she's going to give us a really great overview on that in terms of psychological health and safety. There's environmental factors, there's behavioral factors, and look at these things: financial, the pressure of work, just the pure unpredictability, and that would be an understatement since March 2020, all the changes that your industries and your work have gone through. And then everything listed at the bottom as well, your families in terms of your family-run businesses and how you relate, and how you transition farm ownership and work, and how you manage your health, and what access you even have to social services and public health needs. These are all very important things to think about tonight. We're asking for you to take this time and really reflect, and we're going to have opportunities throughout. And then some more statistics just to back up where we're headed, and the fact that the contribution to peace of mind is through planning. I think you're quite hardwired in terms of your actual occupation is to want to plan and observe the environment and relate to what's actually happening so that you can constructively deal and build in some really great controls to things like stressors or environmental demand or pressure. And you look at some of the results that this research is outlining, and that nearly 90% of whom had a plan found peace of mind. So that's saying something in terms of this test group of people that they went out and said, look, what are you doing that's making a difference? So all of this is really important. And I imagine that you'll have things to share as well along those lines. So jumping into that, when you think about how work impacts on our health, you think about how there's a spectrum of things happening. And it's a lot to do with our perception, right? What could be for one person quite a stressful event or circumstance, others might find invigorating or motivating. So, what we do know, though, from overall workplace health and safety research is that you can be affected by your work. And that's the focus of what we're talking about this evening. The workplace, your occupations, the environment. It's not necessarily your own personal mental health and well-being exclusive of that. So we're trying to help frame it in appropriately, put, as you would understand, put a good fence around it, right? So that you can see where it begins and ends and have context that even though there is this strong evidence that work is affecting things, then there's things that you can do to build controls back into those situations. The psychological and physiological or physical impacts can be addressed. So very hopeful. And when we see health as not just simply, we're here, we're existing, it's really about this positive concept that you have resources, that you are part of a community, that you're part of a network of people that want to help each other. And I know that I've been to many different events in the last several years to do with agriculture, and it showed up time and again. And this comes directly from the Ottawa Charter on Health Promotion. So think about that. That's a number of years old. And it's talking very specifically about things that you're probably already doing in community and support of each other. But it's needing to be emphasized during our chat tonight because there's so many things that determine health. And we think about what we just referenced about those, those with the business plan or thriving, etc. But that doesn't necessarily remove all these other stressors and things that may bear other forms of influence, right down to what we've inherited biologically, the experiences we've had when we were younger, the conditions of our work, what our gender might be as we identify. So all kinds of things help determine our health. And this comes from Public Health of the Government of Canada. And most definitely, lots of research has been done with the big yes, affirmative, that work is a determinant of our health. There are so many hours and so much we put into work that it will obviously bear impact. So this is just further research, and it's confirming for us that yes, we've got to look at it that holistically and that broadly. And these specific things called social determinants of health, that it's social and economic, and it keeps it as inclusive as it can be to all the things we can consider and think about when we're walking through this tonight. So I'm going to pass it back over to Emma. She's going to talk a little bit deeper about work and health and healthy workplaces.
Thank you. Great to meet all of you and see all of you tonight, and hope that you are all well as we continue this conversation. And as Sue framed it up, really talking about the organization as a whole, not so much individual mental health, but knowing that the organization can impact mental health. And we also recognize that there's varying sizes of organizations on the call tonight. But regardless of the sector, regardless of the industry, we're dealing with people and really focusing on that employee experience component, the relationships, the trust, and the support. That's really what underpins a lot of this healthy workplace and mental health ideas. So I will start moving through it, and it's this idea of the two concepts of really creating a safe space for individuals and then promoting good mental health for individuals. So you've got the organization and you've got individuals, and this idea of protection and promotion, and that'll keep coming up as we keep chatting. But again, underpinning it all is the relationships, the trust, and the support. And that's what's going to help create these great work environments for you and for your teams, and again, protect and promote workplace mental health. If we go to the next one, we look at this idea of moving beyond just the physical when we talk about our health and safety programs or our workplaces as a whole. So we're not just looking at the black and white, the working at heights or WHMIS programs or physical hazards, noise and whatnot, but actually starting to weave in what's the psychological impact of some of these things as well. What happens when we're working in an environment in which we don't feel psychologically safe? You know, again, if I don't feel comfortable going in and reporting that a guard is missing, or I've been standing too long and I've got an impact on my back and my feet, if we don't have a safe space for me to come forward to share that with my manager or my health and safety committee, then it doesn't, a big piece is missing there. So we really need to think about that psychological safety and that place of trust and support for workers to come forward to share their concerns and their feelings, and as Sue said earlier, their perceptions of things as well, which again can be a bit tricky because we don't always have control over how people are going to perceive things. So that's why we try and improve the way that we do our work and the way we organize work and the way we write our policies, procedures, and our processes as safe as possible, in which it's woven into the fabric of the organization, as opposed to relying on individuals and their perceptions of it, so to speak. But that is really what we're trying to capture in a lot of this. So when you think about mental health in your workplace, in your farm, in your organization, what does it mean? Sorry, Sue, do you mind just flipping to the next one? Sorry. So there's lots of different ways we can look at this, and I want you to this is a bit of reflection bit, and think about what does mental health mean to you, and where do you feel that your organization is fitting? And we're going to go through some factors that are specific to mental health and impacts to mental health for the individual. But what does it mean to you? And if you feel comfortable, feel free to throw some of your ideas in the chat. I'll share mine. For me, mental health in my workplace means that I feel I've got role clarity and I know what is expected of me on a day-to-day and month-to-month. And I have someone that I can go to and chat and support. So those are a couple of ways that mental health shows up for me in the workplace. So from a support point of view, or from that role clarity. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in and share what their thoughts are for mental health in their organization, of what does that mean to them. Feel free to throw it in the chat. And we've got Eden and Goldie also from CCOHS are part of our comms team, and they're doing some of the tech component and monitoring. And I've noticed Eden throwing in some resources as well for you to look at. Sue, do you want to share what your mental health at work looks like?
Much like yourself, it's the psychological support. It's knowing that I have a ways and a means to express myself authentically and be heard and seen. That's really quite important. And it doesn't really matter the circumstance. It's more about knowing that I can talk through with teams of people or individuals where things are really at, because I want to solve things with them. I want things to be motivated positively. And I imagine that's, again, pretty much hardwiring for this type of industry you're working in. Every day is a new adventure in problem solving and making things better and making things even healthier, safer, so that you can have great outcomes. So I'm much of the same way of being. I really do appreciate that.
And that's also good foreshadowing for an example I'm going to give later about problem solving. So I promise we didn't actually set that up. That actually just happened. So if anybody wants to throw something in the chat, please by all means do so. But we'll go to the next slide. The definition of a psychologically healthy workplace. This is taken from the CSA standard for psychological health and safety. And in a nutshell, essentially, it's making sure that we are not doing anything to cause harm to an individual, and making sure that we're looking at these psychosocial factors that, no, it's okay, so you can go to the next one, that these factors that we're about to go through, that we're doing them in a way that actually promotes, and it really does, again, protect and promote the mental health of individuals. The factors can impact the team health. So how do they work together? What's their dynamic? The individual, how do they feel at the end of the day? Are they leaving the workplace drained, or are they leaving energized? And then with all of that, there's financial implications as well, because a lot of this, again, is the people. So without your people, you don't have much. You really do need to rely on those folks that are doing the work and looking after them, and creating that community and problem solving together to overcome challenges in the organization. Because I know there are a lot of things in the agriculture world that you actually don't have a lot of control over, and we can appreciate that is one of those challenges, because a lot of this is, we'll put controls in place, and that's how you fix the problem. But it's this thing that keeps circling in my mind, is specifically for agriculture, is how do you implement controls for things that you don't have control over? So things like the weather and your crops and crop yields and whatnot, and that I can appreciate is one aspect of stress that is overlaid on a lot of people's mental health in this sector. So these factors are rooted in research, and they are referenced in the CSA standard that I mentioned. And I'm going to run through each of them. If you want to go to the next slide, thanks, Sue. I'm going to go through each of them and give a brief description. And then we're going to do a bit of a reflection. And Brittany, maybe I might suggest that we pause the recording if we open up the floor so we can talk and share. So we're creating a little bit of a safe space, but we'll play that by ear in about 5 minutes time. So I'm going to describe what all of these factors are. And then I'd like you to be thinking of a couple of things. I'd like you to be thinking about which two are strengths in your organization. Which two do you feel need improvement? And so let's talk about psychological support. And that really is the idea that I feel supported in my own mental health. So can I show up and can I be myself? Can I go to my manager and share how I'm feeling and what do I need? And do I have that support? I'll share a very brief example of something that I managed to experience very positively in my workplace and feel very fortunate on, is that I went through some personal stuff a few years ago, and my manager was incredibly supportive. And in a time when I needed that and actually was not putting myself first, he kind of overstepped and said, no, you need to look after yourself, and I need you to go and do this and take the time that you need and come back rested and ready to go again. And my teammates were very helpful in helping with that support. So that psychological support is really key, which also ties into culture. You'll notice that these factors have a bit of overlay on one another. They influence each other. So that culture, that team spirit, that fostering of that environment of community is important, usually led off by good, clear leadership and managing the expectations and setting out what expectations are for everybody. Of course, that's all going to be underpinned with some really solid civility and respect. You do not need to be best friends with everybody in your organization, not at all. It's good to have a really close friend in your organization, a good person that you can go to, but it's not a requirement. but civility and respect is something that should be the cornerstone of your workplace, and making sure that people act in a civil and respectful manner. Making sure that there's good psychological job fit, meaning that you're not overstimulating or conversely understimulating people, making sure that they know how to do their job and that it is the right cognitive fit for them. Making sure that growth and development is a conversation that you're having with your team, and finding out what do they have interest in and how can you continue to grow them. Trying to develop them how you can, giving different opportunities, different learning times for them, and how does that fit into their personal growth plan, but also the organizational strategic plan as well. Recognition and reward is one that we often hear a lot of. I know some companies offer point systems and catalogs of prizes and different year marks and things like if you've been there for 5 years, you can, I think my friend got a rice cooker for 5 years at her one organization that she worked in. I would encourage you to get to know your team, get to know your workers, figure out what motivates them. And that recognition and reward is going to be different for every single person. And it's important to understand if people want to be recognized privately, publicly, how rewards don't necessarily have to be monetary, but it comes back to the relationships. It comes back to knowing your team. And you can ask them point blank, like, how do you like to be recognized? Have that dialogue about feedback. How do you, what do you prefer? And again, that'll foster that safe space for people. Involvement and influence can be as something as simple as having access to the Joint Health and Safety Committee, and or having an open door, encouraging people to share their ideas, to problem solve together, to bring forth their suggestions. Not everything might be implemented, but if you give an opportunity for a conversation for people to weigh in, that can help and give a sense of community, and that we're all, again, in that decision making together, solving problems. Pardon me. When we're doing all of this, we want to make sure that we're protecting people's capacity. So being honest with how many hours in a week are there, how many hours in a month are there that people can safely do their job and deliver on work. So when you are planning and scoping projects or deliverables, what are you looking for and how are you planning that? And how do you know how much effort is needed to complete something safely? You'll also want to factor in how do people work. That might be different for one person to the next. So again, knowing your team is fundamental. Engagement, having opportunity to bring the community, your organization, your community together, and making sure there's balance, encouraging the disconnect. We're hearing a lot about that in the news at the moment, this importance of disconnecting and taking time, taking rest is important. You shouldn't feel guilty for taking a break, especially for these earned paid time off and weekends and evenings and mornings, whatever the shift work may be, but taking your time and having that encouraged. And then finally, the last couple, I'll just do the last one. Other is always the catch-all. So that's important for employers to do an assessment of what's unique to their organization. And then the other two, psychological protection and protection of physical safety, kind of go hand in hand. So do I feel physically safe going into my organization, knowing that the equipment is in good working order, that there's a safe work procedure, that I've got the right personal protective equipment to do my job? And do I have that psychological protection to come forward and talk about it if need be? So all of these intertwine a little bit. They've all got some overlap, but fundamentally, they're only going to work as well as you know your team, have strong relationships with your team members, and be there to support them and be able to have safe conversations with them, get feedback from them both ways. I encourage feedback on your way of working as well, and create that shifting beyond like manager worker, but shifting to like coach level of like, how do you encourage them to get their best done? So there's a moment now. I'd like to pause, and I hope everyone's okay doing.
Thanks, Emma. Yes, it's really interesting how we've gone through a whole bunch of factors and things for you to reflect on. And again, we can come back around to a couple of things about action. But I wanted to reflect with you again, even more deeper dive, the type of stressors that are uniquely showing up with the Canadian Agricultural Human Resource Council, stating very specifically a lot of what we did chat about, but then think of all the things that could happen in a day, a week, a month, and quite a few of them are listed here on screen. And it's the fact that that unpredictability, there's a lot that you need to work through and change and plan for, but there's always going to be the unpredictable. And as Emma was saying, COVID as a pandemic and the number of months that it's gone on, the impacts it has had on your essential workforce and work reality without food and nutrition in society, that's pretty much a game changer. So that had to continue, that does continue. And we think of everything that comes from those ancillary industries and how it affects things in the market, all the way through to your actual family unit, which we do understand as well from research is quite common, that businesses, small to medium-sized enterprises, are often family run, and especially within your industry. So again, acknowledging that these are all the things that could be examined in terms of risk and the hazards associated. And so this comes to us again. Thank you, Heather Watson, very much. She had provided the coping mechanism compare contrast. And this is a great couple of slides, so get ready. So that you would think that, you know, you're going to be all focused in and getting things done, and that's great. No, that's really important. But the problem is it's the fixation. And this back from Healthy Minds, Healthy Farm Study 2020, again for our Management Canada, there's concern you see of, you know, you can do the planning and you can do like really doubling down effort, but what kind of effects is that really having? So this is, you're already under stress, and then you're thinking, I'm going to just work that stuff harder. So contrast that with, as producers or farm associated people, things that you might tend to let go. And these are the controls that would help you balance out and not maybe become too hypervigilant about the first slide, right? And thinking about not feeling in control of your emotional state. How are your sleep patterns? How motivated do you feel when you're under tremendous stress? Or if your team or your family are under tremendous stress? How are you making those informed decisions and you're in a time crunch to address them? Are you setting aside time for self to learn, for the team to grow and learn, the growth and development factor we talked about? What about your family gatherings and all the social things, like we say, Zoom fatigue and things being done remotely or virtually are gently starting in the last little while to become possible that we will have in person, that family events or family occasions may change to have a certain amount of people that can join us, and that we can have more proximity in terms of physical and social intervention and a sense of connectedness. So really important to see that where you might retreat to naturally, which is more planning, more work, let's get this thing fixed and solved. But what's balancing that out to bring the joy and the meaning and purpose to why you do what you do back into it, right? So great couple of slides there, because it helps you recognize that this is being carefully researched and considered. And you've got to ask yourself when you're under stress, you think from your current emotional state. The Do More Agriculture Foundation, they're talking about work-life balance. And you know, what is it within your control and what is not? And what challenges we're facing, taking time to look at challenges objectively, not in the middle of the crisis itself, but prior. So the prevention mindset and that proactivity, and then back around to how these efforts of social community and like-minded and connected people can really support each other. So places like the Do More Agriculture Foundation, run by and really promoted by farming and agriculture community understand. And they too would support the notion that you've got to do intentional noticing on purpose, very self aware, aware of others, and seeing if things are changing within your own behavior, that of the team, that of what you're working through, the patterns and activities, how people are showing up, how substance use plays a part in some workplace conditions, how it is tolerated or not, depending on the circumstances. And I think of my spouse in construction and this over 35, almost 38 years of his experiences throughout North America and all those job sites and all those differences and things that you need to intentionally notice. There's a lot of parallels between that industry and agriculture and farming. Empathy, how we need to maintain our own perspective, but be able to accurately observe, recognize, and identify really that, hey, that other person as a human being, wow, I'm noticing this, and my heart and myself go out to them. And then in a professional work context, really wanting to be present to people and give them the space, as we were hearing from Brittany earlier, to express and to find ways of bringing their true selves to things. So it's for the benefit of the team too. And the simplicity part. We don't need to have professional counseling or therapeutic backgrounds to ask another person, are you okay? Okay, I'm observing something, and we'll get into a couple of phrases that we wanted to share. All the wonderful things that come from being. And you look at the attitude list up there, compassionate and authentic and kind and trusting and trustworthy and helping others build trust in you. Great little graphic there of just falling back into someone else's being to say, please help me. I'm vulnerable. I need support. These are things I know from what I've heard of the research and what I've heard from people in focus groups. Not always easy, right? Not easy. The active listening bit. It's not just hearing, it's listening. And I've heard that from a colleague very recently, and I really appreciate their insight into that. Not just hearing, but listening. And actively saying things like, so here's what I heard, and repeating back to make sure, because you want to reduce that confusion, you want to be clear in what you're understanding, and give that other person a chance to know that's not quite what I meant. I meant this. Okay, great. And staying open to that and reducing your own defense so that you're really, really listening, not just hearing words. So some tips that we're offering because of work conditions that are moving quickly. There's times that you just need to pull back, right? And employ some of this. And that good old that conversation. So this comes to us from Mental Health Works. And they really did zone in, I mentioned a moment ago about substance use. And they offer some great phrases that can be used in any context, mental health and well-being, other health-related issues you might see showing up that you can imagine might be happening. And so you seem this way, or I imagine this. So are you feeling okay? So, I'm just concerned. And like you offer that empathy in that moment. And also like it sounds harsh, you don't look as well as you usually do, but this is from a place of caring and compassion, not judgment, right? You actually are noticing something if someone's color has changed or their mood or how they're showing up. And that is the intentional part. And we call it that conversation because it's not easy to have, but it's an exploration and it's something about a pattern, right? It's not just a one-off that they had a certain thing happen for a day and a bit. We're talking that there's some sort of patterning happening. The focus here, Mental Health Works continues, is that behavior or the concern that you're having, and you're looking for options. You're looking for those healthy controls and really supports. And then from that job or work expectation, what is it you need to do to help in terms of your management, supervisory, leadership capacity, even as a peer, to give the support notions to this person, to give help on direction, really, so that they can continue on the path of health and well-being and not stay stuck necessarily. We spend so much time at work. We're at work right now, Emma and I and Brittany and Eden and Goldie, we're all here like being present with you because we actually truly believe that having these type of dialogues and helping destigmatize what all this is might actually help somebody this evening and might make a concrete change start to either happen or take hold. So the whole trick here is not to be judgmental. So the accusatory or starting to point fingers at things, um, to go to their I've been there and have, as Emma and I have called it, whose cat may be blacker kind of conversations isn't really appropriate because it's now getting into this sort of like switching the focus off the other person or the group that's involved back onto yourself. So, and just head in the sand and it's, I don't want to deal and ignoring something. I don't think there's anything in life that goes away if it's problematic exclusively on its own, right? If it's problematic. So there will need to be something happen. And to that, those are some things. And again, if there's anything you want to put in the chat, things that are coming up as we're going through. I will be passing that back shortly. I'm still going here for a little bit, right? Let me just see here. Nope. I've made my way straight back to Emma. Please, if you tell us more about some resources and assessment tools.
So we're nearly done. Just one final comment off of Sue's section there, that all of that, those conversations or that conversation and that noticing and everything like that is only really going to happen, not to sound like a broken record, but if you know your team. So how are you going to know if they're not themselves, if you don't truly know what their, again, quote unquote, normal is? So that relationship bit and that that support and that trust so you can have that conversation is so fundamental. So you can say, hey, I've noticed you're not yourself, what, everything okay? And then they're going to feel comfortable coming back and talking to you. So that's my broken record piece that I always go on about. But we'll go through a couple of the resource bits. A shameless plug for an infographic that we've pulled together on farming and mental health. And that was done in collaboration with the Canadian Agriculture group. And so we've got a bit of a fast fact card there that you can use as a reference. Farm Credit Canada has resources for agriculture and they provide support, and all of this will be in the handout, as I say that a bit slowly and just look for Sue's nod, that all of these resources are listed in the handout. The Canadian Young Farmers Forum, they do something called Self-Care Sunday, and they've got articles that come out, and we've got a few of the important phone numbers listed here, and again, will be in the handout. And then finally, we have some web tools. Now, when we were talking about this standard earlier, and we were talking about the factors, one of the key components of anything really in health and safety is doing a hazard assessment. So recognizing the hazard, assessing, putting controls in place, and then evaluating. So these three tools here will help you with the assessment step. So what is the employee perception on these different workplace factors? Guarding Minds at Work is more of an employee version, organizational version. Stress Assess has two versions. You can do an individual self-assessment on where you're at with these concepts of these factors, and you can also do an organizational one too. And then the Psychological Safe Leader Assessment is maybe one of the bravest tools out there. It is an assessment that you as a leader can do, see how you feel, and a bit of self-awareness goes a long way. And then you can send that same link out to your workers. They can assess you on the exact same questions, and then you'll get a nice report. And hopefully there aren't too many big gaps between how you see yourself and how your team sees yourself. So again, three very useful tools. They actually are all hosted by us at CCOHS. If you had some questions about those, I would likely be the person answering them, or at least fielding them initially. And Sue and I have both had an opportunity to work and build and support these projects in collaboration with OCAL for the stress assess and Canada Life for Guarding Minds at Work and Psychological Safe Leader. So those are available on our website under our Healthy Minds at Work portal. And again, that'll be in the handout. So just landing on a couple of what does the future hold for this area. I think one of the biggest exciting things in agriculture is the advancement of technology in your field, and it's fascinating to see what's going to be coming. This was taken from an article in the Globe and Mail, which I believe is in the handout. If not, we can throw it in the chat so you guys can have a look at that. But again, this idea of having a national strategy and making sure that there's mental health supports and programs available to people, making sure there's funds and money available for mental health in the workplace. And there's a great need and a great acknowledgement. And I think the governments are putting money where their mouth is, and there is a lot of funding available to address mental health in agriculture. So it's a good article, and it goes through again that impact as well as technology in the fourth revolution, the fourth industrial revolution, or the technology revolution, pardon me. So very interesting. And then finally, a research update. There's 2 studies that are underway through University of Guelph. Over $250,000 was granted to do these 2 research projects, again, all about mental health. And it's being done through perception surveys, and they're being rolled out over the next year. And this is the they do want to see what the interruptions are, specifically COVID as well. So that has had quite the interruption in many sectors and very much in agriculture. So it'll be interesting to see what these 2 research projects produce, and hopefully with understanding can come solutions. So we'll stay tuned for those study reports when they come out. And then finally, closing on just some thoughts. And it's important to engage everybody in the organization in this idea. So your health and safety committee, your union, if applicable, all layers of management, senior, middle, supervisors, and the workers. Make sure everybody understands why this is important. Help them see the value as to why we're talking about this in the first place. Why is this even on the agenda? Know that this is going to take some time. You're potentially overcoming biases, you're overcoming ways of working, new ways of working, shifting perspectives and whatnot. So patience is key, and the change is going to take time, which then is also going to require a bit of perseverance as well. So make sure you celebrate success along the way. When you first do your first run at all of this, take stock of what you're currently doing, celebrate it, celebrate the good stuff that is currently happening in your workplace. And then continue to celebrate, continue to communicate, let people know what is happening and again, why it's important. And finally, this idea that we're all in it together, and Sue referenced it throughout, this idea of problem solving. And it's this, what always sticks in my mind is this illustration I saw. Admittedly, I think it was about more relationships, like romantic relationships, and the couple was standing facing off and a swirl in front of them, illustrating a problem. And it was saying that you shouldn't stand faced off over this problem in the middle of you. You should be stood side by side with your partner with the problem in front of you, and you're tackling it together. I think that same illustration works here. And the idea is that we all have a different responsibility. We all have a problem, and how we solve that problem, we're all going to have a different role to do that. And by working together, we're going to tackle it together and have hopefully quite positive results, and that would show up in positive mental health for all within your organization. So keeping all of that in mind, I say thank you very much. Sue, thank you. It's been a while since we've co-hosted anything. It's lovely to do that again. And I hope the information was useful and there's something for you to take back tonight to your workplace or share with others some of these ideas and thoughts. So thank you very much. Brittany, it's all you.